Well, we're back. Ricky Larson this week here, Lucky Shots Media, as we are 5 weeks into the season, and it's kind of decision time, and I want to start with just an ambiguous question because I'm sure a lot of you, no matter where you are in the standings, are thinking about what do I do from here, right? Pivotal point in the season. So if you're at the top of the standings, I ask, what do you do? Are you looking to get better? Do you think I've already got the team here with me? Stick with what's been working. Now you're getting into buys, I think, too, which are always strategic. And then on the other side of things, what are you giving up down low? If you're in the bottom of the standings, are you looking to blow up the roster or start making some trades? How do you kind of view it where you're at in the standings as we enter week 6?
So if you're at the top, you kind of just got to stay the course, don't you? I mean, it would make sense to not make any moves that are going to put your team in jeopardy if you're sitting at the top. But for my leagues, at least, the people who are at the top have zero depth, and now they're getting into those bye weeks.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to figure out how to navigate if you didn't put any depth into your lineup. Like, it's great. You started off 4-1, 5-1, but now we're into bye weeks. Say some of your top guys are out that week and you don't have anybody behind them. So my strategy there would be, just try to give up one piece for a few pieces.
Right.
It doesn't have to be your biggest piece. Obviously, you don't want to get rid of that, but you've got somebody that's, having a bit better of a season than you imagined they would, and you can sell them a little higher, go get a couple of, they're obviously not going to be banger players, but people you can put in when other guys have bye weeks. But for the most part, I know some people that just don't put any depth in. They have a bye week and they just eat it that week. They're like, I don't have another quarterback except for Josh Allen. I'll just grab some schmuck off the waiver wire and I'll just eat it this week, see what happens. So that's also a great strategy because who knows? Your top guys are only going to be out 1 week. You can just eat a loss that week. Hopefully it's not continually eating a loss every week because one of your top guys is out. But that's the best strategy. If nothing is wrong, like it's the old saying, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So that's probably the best way to go if you're sitting on top. If you're sitting at the bottom like I am, you need to not give up.
Right.
That's the biggest part. Was just talking to you earlier about I started one season 0-4, made a big run. I didn't lose the rest of the season, and then I made the playoffs, made a bit of a run there as well. You just got to be very smart with what you're doing. You've got to make sure you keep up on the waiver wire because guys will inevitably pop up there. I mean, who had somebody like George Pickens throughout this season?
Right.
Who had somebody like, trying to think of another receiver.
I mean, Rondale Moore was injured, and all of a sudden he looks to have a bigger piece of the offense until Hopkins comes back, potentially.
Yeah, so you or like Kenneth Walker. He definitely was a guy this week that was sitting on waivers. If you were paying attention, saw Rashad Penny went out for the season. He's a huge pickup for you. So you just have to stay diligent on the waiver wire. Make sure that when things pop up, you're able to go get them, especially if you have one of the lower records, you have a higher waiver claim in most leagues. So go make sure you're keeping up on that. And then if you need to, like me, I had Jamar Chase. He's a big selling point of a name. Go get yourself some other pieces to kind of distribute out through your lineup instead of just trying to have one big hitter. Because if, again, like me, if you have Jamar Chase, who's supposed to be that big hitter and he's not hitting, then the rest of your team still isn't hitting either. Yep. And you're not getting those points you expected from that one player. So you can trade one guy to get, not studs, but some guys that can at least boost the rest of your team. That's a big way to go. And if you're sitting somewhere in the middle, you just got to decide if you like your team and you're going to ride with them, or if you want to make moves. Being in the middle right now is probably the best position to be in, but it feels like the hardest because you're like, okay, I'm 2-3 or 3-2, not quite at the top, but is my team really that bad? I mean, you're getting wins. So That's got to be the best place to be, but also the toughest place to be. And again, you just have to make your own decisions on whether or not you do believe in your team or you don't, because on either other end of the spectrum, you do believe in your team because you're winning every game, or you're on the bottom end of the spectrum where you're like, fuck, nothing's going right. So I just have to change everything up. So
it's good advice, and it's kind of like I would make a golf comparison here, where the PGA Tour, they always say the third round, so the Saturday round is moving day. I would say this is the equivalent of moving day for the fantasy football season, where it's like, okay, who's going to make that run? Waiver wire getting more bare, bye weeks piling up, so people are even going there. So like trades are going to happen too as we get closer to your fantasy trade deadline. Who are guys you are buying low on and selling high? Just any names that come to the top of your head here. As you know, I think of like, I don't think you can really like, do you buy low on Najee Harris, or is that a guy you don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole? Brandon Cooks during a buy. Are you buying high maybe on Damian Pierce? I'll just throw out some names that maybe light up to you, Ricky.
so one guy that I think you can still buy fairly low is Chris Olave, just because you never know what that offense is going to look like. People who may have him maybe don't know the status of that team, because you don't know when Jameis is going to be in. You don't know if it's a Taysom Hill touchdown frenzy. You don't know if Andy Dalton can get him the ball. He's a guy that gets a lot of targets. And again, I'm a guy who loves to have targets and opportunities to score fantasy points, because the more opportunities you get, the higher chance you have. I mean, if you get 13 targets, that's a chance for points every single time, as compared to some guys that, only get, like Jamar Chase, who only get a couple catches a game and put up 12 points for you. So I would buy into Olave. I'm buying into George Pickens. I've talked about it the last couple of weeks. Just the fact that he's able to go out and, even against a good team last week, put up 16 points. He seems like the number one target now. And if you didn't get him off waivers, he's probably on a team that's not that good. So you can go try to buy him off of that team, offer them some other things that maybe you don't believe in. He's another guy that I would buy into. I'm completely buying into Kenneth Walker and Ramondre Stevenson. Kenneth Walker, because he is now the back for them. They've got really no other choice with Rashad Penny going out. And Ramondre Stevenson, he's getting the job done throughout the season so far. Now Damian Harris has, I believe it's a hamstring injury, which is, how hamstring injuries go. Yep. They are going to linger. So even if Harris comes in, I think Ramondre Stevenson is still a guy that you can easily be like, yeah, I'm still comfortable playing him. So he's somebody else you got to go for. The biggest thing is, don't be afraid to try to make trades. I know that there's people in leagues who their team isn't good and they just immediately don't look at trades. Don't get discouraged. I mean, keep sending them stuff, because their team's obviously not good either. And you can target some of those guys in the middle too that aren't sure about how their team looks. Maybe throw something out. Some guys that I'm definitely selling on. I'm selling on Marquise Brown now. He's somebody that I think you could sell because he's had such a good start to the season, but with DeAndre Hopkins coming back, Zach Ertz being a guy that also is getting a lot of targets, that opportunity is going to dwindle. And, he's been sitting at 10 or more targets, I think, the past few weeks. That's going to drop down to 4 or 5 a week, I think. So he's somebody I think you could get rid of and get a couple other pieces that maybe they just get more opportunities. They might not score as much looking at it, but if they're going to get more opportunities, they got more chances. I'm trying to think of somebody else I'd sell. I've already said I am selling Brandon Cooks as fast as I can. He's going to be a harder person to sell.
Not much value.
Yeah. Hasn't shown much this year. So another guy I would buy into is, I said George Pickens. I I had another name here that I was buying into. I can't remember, but yeah.
Couple of names
Just,
there for you to go after for sure. I
yeah.
like it.
Yeah. It's just based on, what you feel. And who knows? Maybe we can start buying into Zach Wilson as well. I
Yeah.
mean, 2 decent weeks. They haven't been, blowing it up, but the Jets just scored 40 points. Zach Wilson only accounted for one of those. But shit, if their offense can put up that many points, you got to expect Zach Wilson to be a part of that more going down the line. It is only going to be his third game back from injury. So,
And check out the Lucky Bets podcast this week. Me and Ricky talk about this team that we really like, the Jets. We're going back to the well. Wilson's been solid. So check that out. That'll be posted this week. I want to do kind of a little segment here called Grade the Trade.
okay.
We've thrown out this earlier. So, I told you about the Jamar Chase for Keenan Allen, Michael Pittman. That was back on September 21st. What would you have given that at the time, and what would you give it now?
So as a person who sold Jamar Chase, uh, I gave it a little lower of a grade. I believe probably like in the C plus to B range.
Yeah.
But we talked about it on my podcast. It's now kind of a wash.
Right.
And you've got, I think, a higher ceiling with Jamar Chase, as much as I hate to say it. So Keenan Allen, you haven't gotten to use him for however many weeks since you got him.
Right.
Pittman has had one good week, then got hurt. Now it's looking like Alec Pierce is starting to become a thing. So I would put that in the B plus to A range because you, at least with Jamar Chase, you know what that offense looks like. You know the amount of opportunities he's going to get. With the other two guys, you don't know when Keenan Allen's going to play.
And also a hamstring for him too,
Yeah, exactly. And we were just talking about Damian Harris with a hamstring. This is how it lingers. You never know week to week if he's going to play or not. And then Michael Pittman just hasn't performed to what he could be doing like he did in week one. So I'd have to give it a higher B plus to A rating now.
Well, we ended up flipping both receivers just this week. So he ended up flipping Michael Pittman Jr. Here's another grade the trade. He sends Michael Pittman Jr. and Jeff Wilson Jr., a couple of juniors cutting it up, for Chris Olave, one of your buy candidates, and Deontay Johnson. What are you looking at there?
I don't
Good
mind
flip?
that. I mean, I would think so. Because I think Olave's sitting in a better position than either one of the two other receivers. And then we know what Deontay Johnson can do. I want to see after this week what this offense looks like because the last 2 weeks have been tough. It's just two tough defenses. You got Buffalo last week, Tampa Bay this week. You're gonna be hurting for fantasy points there as it is. Because I really do like George Pickens, I really do like Pat Freiermuth, but we know that Deontay Johnson can rattle off 8 catches with a 2-quarter span.
But can he do it with Pickett? That's what I'm.
I think they're gonna have to because let's talk about Najee Harris. He hasn't done much. He hasn't played very well. He hasn't put out much fantasy output. So I think they're gonna have to throw the ball. And I don't mind it. I think you win the trade getting Olave and Johnson there.
So there you go. He turned it into a win for himself. Jeff Wilson, you imagine, is going to lose his running back once that gets more healthy.
And
there
you had Tevin Coleman last week. I mean, Jeff Wilson still scored somewhere in the neighborhood of 20, but you had another running back in that backfield do something.
It's not Wilson for Wilson. It's the Shanahan offense, plug and play. That's what you're trying to get for. Okay, so I ended up selling Jamar Chase, so I flipped Chase too. I sent him along with Adam Thielen and Gerald Everett because I just picked up Taysom Hill. We could talk about him a little bit. It's like, how do you use him? So I sent those 3. I'm getting Ramondre, my boy, back, and Njoku.
Yeah, you already won getting Ramondre Stevenson.
Let's go. And I needed a running back so bad. I mean, it was dry.
Yeah, I feel you at the running back position for sure. But Chase is just, we can put him in the category of bust Because if you go in the first round and you're not scoring more than 15 points a week, what's going on?
It's frustrating.
It just doesn't make sense. And we're continuing to see that this Bengals offense is just going to struggle, and they're going to struggle, and they're going to struggle because their offensive line is still bad.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow, he's doing fine, but he's looking at other options more consistently. He's not just force feeding the ball to one guy. He's being a good quarterback and looking for other options if option A isn't open. But Ramondre Stevenson, we talked about him on my podcast as well. He's a stud. And the fact that Damian Harris has a hamstring injury, don't know how long it's going to linger. I think Stevenson ends up becoming that bell cow, which is going to be interesting to see if that's actually how it goes in a Bill Belichick offense, where normally it's a committee, which it still has been with Harris and Stevenson, but now Stevenson's the only healthy, good back. So I think you already win there. And who is the second piece you got?
Njoku as a throw-in. I'm flexing him.
Yeah, and I mean, you love Njoku, and how can't you? The only question I have with Njoku is whether or not when Watson comes,
is the report there.
Right, but I mean, you have to wait until week 11, and we're already going to be damn near the playoffs by then. So I think it's going to be okay. Just a little shaky about whether or not Njoku is going to carry over to Watson, because Watson historically doesn't throw to tight ends all that.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to go more deep down the field. Njoku's kind of more of a curl route. Yeah, it was just me. Just like, I am hungry for Stevenson. Chase has been solid, but again, it's disappointing when you have so much more high expectations. And I've Cup, so I was like, okay, I gotta pull this. So just quickly, what do we do with Taysom Hill? Do you start him? Like, could you risk? I picked him up. Like, I was basically like, all right, I need to do something here. Everett was banged up last week, so I sat him. Good thing I sat him because he scored 1.7 points. Not great because the guy I streamed him with was Mo Alley Cox, who scored 1.8. So what a great move by me. I saved myself 0.1. So I'm going all in on Hill starting. Like, what, is he going to put up another 1-point performance? How do the Saints take him out of the offensive game plan when all he does is score touchdowns?
Right. He's a guy, if you have him, the tight end position is so weak. If you don't have Andrews, if you don't have Kelsey, you might as well play Taysom Hill, because let's see, he was the tight end 1 this week and didn't touch the ball through the air. Okay, so damn, now I'm sitting here trying to find the damn thing. Yeah, had 22 passing yards and a touchdown, 112 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground, 34 points. I mean, he doesn't have to catch the ball. He's a tight end position player and can put up 30 some odd points without even catching the football. I mean, you have to, if you have him, you might as well play him, because sometimes you might get 1-2 points, but you just named off 2 tight ends that get 1 or 2 points
that aren't throwing or running.
Yeah. And they don't have a chance in hell of scoring 30 points. So you got to put them in, and it's the risk reward, but the reward is so much higher than any of those other guys. Because if you say you play Everett and he has a 17-point game, you're like, yeah, that's great. But Taysom Hill had a 30-point game. You still would have rather put in Taysom Hill. So he's a guy that if you've got him, start him every single week and just pray, because I mean, you're either going to get a huge game or you're not going to get much. But a huge game is going to help you a lot more than anybody else playing mediocre.
It's more risky, but what if you go safe this week and it's Everett and you get 7 points and Hill, has a lesser game but still puts up 18, Right. All right, let's do some start sit rapid fire. Ricky Larson, Lucky Shots Media. Check out his podcast, Fantasy Football. He's got you covered all throughout the week. We do betting as well. What should Matt Stafford be rostered? I mean, that's just a generic question. I can't believe he's rostered in this league. Him, Tua, Rodgers, any of these guys droppable yet for you?
Stafford was droppable after week 1.
Yeah.
I still have him rostered because I need a second quarterback, and there's really nothing else that I can go pick up. I could have gone and got Geno at some point. But yeah, he's a guy that if you have him, you can drop him and not be worried about it in the slightest, because if somebody else goes and picks him up, he's their problem now. I think you can drop him. Rodgers is kind of tough because
he's a back-to-back MVP, and he doesn't have a single game over. He's had 4 straight games at 16 points. Like that's his ceiling and floor.
I mean, just depends on if you really like consistency and you don't mind getting at least 15 to 16 out of your quarterback. He's all right, doing more than Matt Stafford is. I think he's somebody you can still maybe hold on to, but if there's other options that seem riskier but have a higher ceiling than 16, you got to go with it. Tua, I think you're still fine with Tua. Honestly, we were really high on him, and the only reason we're not now is because he's been out for a couple of weeks with.
He's not going to retire. You don't think with the concussion? You haven't heard that? That's
I don't believe so. The NFL now taking every sort of head thing over seriously now. Unless the dude is stumbling around like Tua was or like Naeem Hines was, they're going to be okay. But Tua, I like what we saw before he went down. I think you're still very okay with him. This Miami offense is going to pop off when he does come back, as long as they can protect him a little more than what they were. But he's somebody I still think you're fine with. And talk about a high ceiling. He's somebody that has a very high ceiling as well. So yeah.
I like it. Any love for Skylar Thompson this week? No stream. We just got to kind of see what happens. Third string quarterback who's going to get the start for Miami.
Ooh.
Yeah. Thank you.
No.
All right. That's all we needed. Starter sit Daniel Jones or Russell Wilson.
Go Danny Dimes. What have we seen from the Broncos offense? Nothing. Not a drop of anything. I think Wilson maybe had 1 week where he got 20 points. And then the rest of the weeks are either single digits or low tens. I don't like it. Daniel Jones, I don't even know who the hell he's throwing the ball to over there. Mostly Saquon. But
Bellinger.
Who knows? You could throw a screen pass to Saquon for 50 yards and score more than Russell Wilson scores the whole game. So, I mean, I like Daniel Jones.
Wilson or Jacoby Brissett?
Let's go with Brissett. We've seen more out of the Cleveland offense than we have the Broncos offense. And, you like Njoku. He's looking for that big guy down in the red zone. And Amari Cooper's playing really well as a wide receiver as well. So there's a lot more opportunities.
Looks like we're sitting Wilson. Last one I have is Russ or Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence has the Colts and Russ has the Chargers. This one's a little bit tighter.
This one is tighter. Had you asked me 2 weeks ago before Trevor Lawrence turned the ball over 7 times, I would have gone with Lawrence, but I'm going to kind of talk about it on my game day show. It looks like he's reverting back to last year. He was doing real good, only had 1 turnover. Now 2 weeks later, he's got 7 turnovers and maybe 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's a tough ratio.
And against the Texans, he didn't do anything. It's like,
so I believe in Trevor Lawrence more, but this one's tough. Just because the Chargers defense isn't anything to write home about either. But I don't see it being a get-right game for Wilson, because this offense, as long as Nathaniel Hackett's the coach, this offense is going to suck. So I still got to go with Lawrence, even though it would be a little shaky.
Yeah, that one's a toss-up for sure. Are we starting James Robinson this week? Auto start, a little bit questionable.
That's tough too, because he's
Colts
fallen
defense
off the last 2 weeks as well. just depends on what else your running back room looks like. But if I had James Robinson in my running back room, I definitely would be happy to start him because you know what he can do. He's only busted 2 weeks and we're 5 weeks in. So a 3-to-2 ratio is better than just right down the middle. So I think you can start him this week. They're going to have to get him involved if they want to be successful. So I think you're good starting him.
Robinson automatically over Najee, or
Yeah. Yeah, because Najee this week going up against Tampa Bay, he's already struggling, and this is a good defense. So, yeah, I would still go with Robinson.
Najee or Zeke?
Yuck. Because Zeke's going up against Philly. Yeah. Philly's proved to have a pretty good defense, but
that's gonna be a huge game. Battle of 4-1s, right?
Eagles undefeated.
Oh, I beg your pardon. That's right. Battle for the top of the division.
Battle for the top of the division. Yeah. So I still think Zeke at least has touchdown value. And they have to rely more on the run game and the defense. Everybody's high on Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush really hasn't done anything. He's sure he's hasn't lost yet.
Yeah.
But that's because their defense is really good and Zeke and Pollard are carrying that offense. So I like Zeke, and I think Zeke has at least one touchdown this week.
That's what's been so disappointing is this dude is touching the ball 20 plus times, and all he's getting you is all he does is get you rushing yards in fantasy because he's not in the passing game. He's not scoring. It's frustrating. That's it. Those are two frustrating backs. That's why it's interesting. Najee and Zeke.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to receivers before we get Ricky Larson out of here. Some great stuff as always. Fantasy football this week. Let's do a start sit, Devin Duvernay or Garrett Wilson?
I like Garrett Wilson.
Been disappointing since Zach Wilson has showed up, but it's like the promise is still there.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is Tyler Conklin we were pretty high on as well, and then Wilson comes back. Conklin goes from tight end 3 to tight end 12. Put up a gooser last week. But I still like I like Wilson better. I feel like he's a better wide receiver, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And he's got more opportunities, I think, than Duvernay. I think Duvernay is very deep touchdown dependent, as is Rashad Bateman.
Yeah.
The only thing you can count on with the Ravens is Lamar's going to get a bunch of points, and more than half of his throws are going to go to Mark Andrews. So I like Wilson better.
Allen Lazard or Romeo Dobbs? Same team.
I like Randall Cobb better than both the guys, but
interesting.
Let's go with Dobbs. We really haven't seen anything great out of Lazard. I think he caught a touchdown one week, and that was about all. At least with Dobbs, we've seen that he can be a reliable target if that's who Rodgers chooses to go to. So I think him over Lazard is better, but I trust Randall Cobb more than any of the receivers in that wide receiver room.
Gotcha. I think that should do it unless I could find something interesting here in a flex. But other than that, I mean, let's just toss a random one out here. Njoku or Adam Thielen for flex position?
Njoku. Talking about touchdown dependent guys, that is Adam Thielen. Yeah. He's gotten it done the last 2 seasons being a touchdown dependent guy. Not this year. I think he maybe has a couple touchdowns, but that offense revolves around and is successful through Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, no.
So
true.
I mean that's their passing game, and then you got Dalvin Cook holding it together on the ground. Thielen, he scores a touchdown. That's nice. He gets you 8 points.
I don't think he scored all year. I could be mistaken on that, but
I know he's gotten a few red zone targets, but I haven't really been following him because Jefferson had, I think, like 13 catches in the first half last week.
Oh, crazy. Yeah. He helped kill my team for sure. All right, great to get you back, Ricky. We'll do it again next week. Back on schedule here, Lucky Shots Media. Check out the constant fantasy football NFL coverage over on his YouTube page, Twitter as well. We'll tweet out the links for this. You can always follow him. And on our YouTube page, we got that hyperlink to his YouTube page there for you as well. Subscribe to both. Appreciate the insight as always. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you. See you later.